Good morning to our guests here in Lagos, the whole country, Nigeria, and of course across the continent. For those who are watching us online, welcome to Breakfast Central on a Monday morning. For the next 2 hours, as always, we bring to you some of the major conversations happening here in the country, and you're welcome to join us in the second half of Breakfast Central. I am Osaogie Ogbawa.
And it feels good to be here again on a Monday morning, no doubt, where everyone is geared and ready to start off a brand new working week. For us here, it's a new week to tell the biggest stories, especially coming out from Nigeria and beyond. I'm Joe Hansen, by the way, reporting for duty. And most importantly, it's quite shocking that those who seem to be in charge or those who are taking the lead in Africa are starting to talk tough. At first, we had Dangote speak. And now we have Tony Elumelu who has come out to also speak and say, please, can you tell us those who are stealing the crude oil? I mean, these have formed some of the biggest conversations from here in Nigeria. Aside that, there are other conversations we also look forward to.
Absolutely. Tony Elumelu has, I don't think his voice is new. I think in 2022, he also had a quick, I don't want to call it a rant, but he did express himself, on his social media platforms, also complaining about Nigeria's oil sector and the mismanagement here and there. And if you remember also in the build-up to the election 2023, Peter Obi also asked similar questions, and these are questions that are, pretty popular, which is, who's stealing Nigeria's crude and who's going to be checking the mismanagement in the NNPC Limited and, of course, in Nigeria's oil sector generally. There have been major criticisms as to why the Nigerian president has always made himself the Minister of Petroleum. I think that's an anomaly that we need to fix, but that has been the norm in the last couple of years of administrations rather, and it doesn't seem to have improved much with regards to Nigeria's oil sector. And nobody even asked, at any time, the Minister of Petroleum, who's the president, to answer questions with regards to mismanagement in the oil sector. So Tony Elumelu, of course, has spoken. I remember Femi Otedola also did push out, his own narratives, of course, when Dangote was complaining. But there are major questions that must be asked and answered by the current administration or whichever administration is in charge. Over the weekend, we also saw criticism with regards to Nigeria's Olympic performance. 12 billion naira gone down the drain without any medal. Peter Obi, of course, put out a long statement on his X account. But it wasn't just him. The Minister of Sports also felt like it was necessary to explain, and of course, tell Nigerians exactly his side of the story. He eventually ended up, with the fact that they were going to be reviewing their performance, and seeing what needs to be, improved upon and all of that. But for me, I did see a situation once again, where we've expended billions of naira without any, anything, that we got out of it. 12 billion naira that, we will never be able to account for, it's all gone. There's been criticism with regards, whether they were well prepared. Many people would argue that they weren't prepared enough to deserve any medals. Unfortunately, Tobi Amusan, who's our only one of our strong medal hopefuls, didn't come back with any medal. So will the 12 billion naira be questioned? Will the Minister of Sports, I looked at his profile as well yesterday. There's nothing in his profile that shows that he should be Minister for Sports. And this is, with full, no disrespect to him as a person. He has a very interesting profile. He, of course, started with the University of Calabar, entered the House of Representatives in 2003. Of course, stayed there till he contested for governor of Cross River State in 2019, I believe, or 2015, lost to Ben Ayade, and then eventually became Minister of Sports, with the current administration. But there's nothing that shows that, this is a proper sports administrator and will be able to handle that ministry. But of course, he's Minister of Sports. Will he be able to, lead that ministry forward and bring medals, in every other sports competition going forward? We don't know. But the main thing here is we've spent 12 billion naira. We've taken our athletes to the competition and came back with nothing. And just like the Labour presidential candidate was saying, there needs to be some explanation as to why that is. And why, first of all, it cost us 12 billion naira, comparing it with what other African countries that did win medals spent taking their athletes to the Olympics.
It's saddening, I'll put it that way, Osage, because one truth is, no matter how you look at the minister, there's also a situation where even people in the sports fraternity have continued to raise their voices to the highest level to say, you cannot keep putting round holes in square pegs. There's nothing as interesting as putting those who have been in the sports sector or the fraternity for years, for decades, to actually run sports in Nigeria. Now, the Minister, John Ona, or whatever, in terms of looking at what he has brought to the table, cannot be compared to what we saw in this Olympics. It is appalling, sad. I think the pass mark could actually go to the Tigers. So far, so good. With what I see, we learned a lot from this. We saw the Tigers do so much that got us excited that, okay, fine, there's hope here, there's future here. But aside that, there's nothing else. I was reading, someone sent me a story, Chioma Ajunwa, known by Nigerians, who played so well and represented the country. You talk about the round letter game. She said herself that the sports ministry, when she walks in, nobody knows her. Nobody. She said that it's belittling that when she walks in there, even people address her like, hey, sorry, what do you want? Who are you? And that is the same ministry we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, again, you know, this is just something that I believe should not be ignored. The presidency, the Ministry of Sports, and, you know, all interested parties need to ask themselves major questions as to how far and how well. And it's not just in sports. In every other ministry that we're expending billions of naira. Today we're going to be talking about the Jakarta Steel and how about 40 billion or more than 40 billion naira has been expended. They're paying salaries with not one drop of steel being printed there. So there's many questions, you know, with you know, the current administration that they need to be open about. And, you know, if we're going to move forward as a country, block the leakages where billions of naira, you know, continue to, of course, to be lost in different ways. These are important questions that must be asked. But, you know, we'll see how the conversations go today. Stay with us. Let's quickly bring you the top stories for today. And, of course, right after that, our news headlines. Today, Senate tackles former President Obasanjo as it denies fixing members' salaries.
Interesting story, no doubt. I will review requests for new constitution, President Tinubu says, following the call for a new constitution in Nigeria.
All right, and also this morning, idle Jakarta workers paid 38.9 billion naira in 10 years, says the report.
Group calls for reversal of fuel subsidy removal. Is it possible or is it not?
We'll also be taking you through the newspapers this morning, sharing with you the major stories making headlines across the papers. But first, breakfast headlines. Breakfast Headlines begins with updates on the End Bad Governance protest. Now, residents of Gaskiya-dan-magaji area in Zaria in Kaduna State have accused security operatives of shooting indiscriminately and killing some youths in their community while enforcing the 24-hour curfew imposed on the city a few days ago. Residents told News Central Television who were calling, and of course those residents were calling for an explanation from the Nigerian Army and accusing the Army personnel of killing 2 youth in their community. The General Officer commanding Division 1 of the Nigerian Army, however, promised to investigate the allegations and present his findings soon.
yanzu ya koma 200 saboda ma'aikata su suke zuwa su kori mutane akan hanya a ce ba za a tare hanya ba za a toshe hanya ba wani hadda tiyaga wani ma da harbi an harbi jama'a da dama da an kakkashe su wanda ba su da galiyu ko da ke ko kana da galiyun ma bai da amfani a Najeriya inda kai ba wani kusa babanka ba wani kusa bane a Najeriya mu yanzu talakawan Najeriya ba mu da wani yanci
maganar harbi kuma da aka yi harbi yanzu magana da ake yi akwai matan da bata gani ba yanzu tana nan a cikin ta fito daki kawai sai a sashi shiga mata kafa yanzu tana nan a kwanci.
A former presidential candidate, Peter Obi, has expressed his deepest condolences to the families of those who lost their lives during the recent End Bad Governance protest. In a statement released on X on Sunday, Obi mourned the loss of lives, including security personnel who died during the demonstrations. He also wished a speedy recovery to those injured during the protest and assured them that their sacrifices would not be forgotten. Meanwhile, parents of victims of the End Bad Governance protests in some states have appealed for the prosecution of security operatives who shot at protesters during the demonstrations in the state. Now, youth groups on the Plateau have restated their commitment to peaceful coexistence in the state. In a press conference in Jos, the Coalition of Plateau Youths said that despite political, religious, ethnic, and socio-cultural divides, all hands need to be on deck to ensure a more civil and organized state. Now, away from that, the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, has refuted claims circulated on social media that Corps members' bank accounts are being upgraded in preparation for the payment of a new 70,000 naira national minimum wage. In a statement released by NYSC's Director of Information and Public Relations, Eddie Megwa, the organization clarified that no directive has been issued by relevant authorities to begin paying the 70,000 naira minimum wage to Corps members or to upgrade their accounts. Megwa described the reports as misleading and entirely false, urging Corps members to be cautious and not fall prey to those attempting to deceive and misinform the public. Away from Nigeria, Rwanda's President Paul Kagame has been sworn in for a fourth term after a landslide victory in last month's elections. The ceremony was attended by dozens of African heads of state and dignitaries at a packed stadium in Kigali. The President Kagame took the oath of office, pledging to preserve peace and national sovereignty. He won the election with an overwhelming 99.18% of the vote, according to the National Electoral Commission. Rights activists have criticized the lack of democracy in the country, with only 2 candidates authorized to run against him. The Democratic Green Party leader, Frank Habineza, came in second with just 0.5% of the vote, while independent candidate Felipe Mpayimana received 0.32% of the votes. The death toll from a devastating garbage landslide in Kampala, Uganda, has risen to 12. According to the police, the disaster occurred on Saturday at a massive landfill in Kitezi, where heavy rainfall caused a collapse, engulfing homes, people, and livestock under mountains of rubbish. Rescue efforts are ongoing, with 14 people rescued alive so far. Several animals, including a dog, have also been saved. However, concerns are growing as approximately 1,000 people are estimated to have been displaced. The Kampala Capital City Authority had initially reported 8 deaths, including 2 children, but the latest update from police puts the death toll at 12. The site has been described as a disaster waiting to happen, with health risk and safety concerns raised earlier this year by Kampala's Mayor, Arias Lukwago. Sad news there from Kampala, but that's all on Breakfast Headlines. We now move back to Breakfast Central and get into our top stories. I am Osaugie Ogbawa.
Thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. Action Aid Nigeria has urged the federal government to reinstate fuel subsidies to protect vulnerable Nigerians from the effects of rising inflation and hardship currently being witnessed. While assessing the state of the nation, the group expressed concerns over the economic policies of the current administration, saying that it has not helped the informal sector of the economy. Our correspondent, Idong Joseph, reports.
A June 2024 report by Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics. Within the last 1 year, Nigeria has witnessed high record inflation, with the cost of foodstuff hitting about 40.87% and the devaluation of the naira eroding the purchasing power of many citizens. Given the dire situation, which has forced more hardship on low-income households in the country, stakeholders have called on the federal and state governments to implement programs aimed at protecting vulnerable citizens, especially reversing the removal of fuel subsidy.
Urgently implement targeted social safety programs and subsidies to protect the most vulnerable populations from the devastating effects of inflation. This includes reinstating fuel subsidies to ease economic burdens on low-income households and small businesses.
While acknowledging efforts by the government to increase the minimum wage of workers, they urged all state governments to ensure compliance and prioritize the use of public funds for essential services.
Nigerian workers cannot continue to live on meager wages while lawmakers and certain public officers take home unreasonable and humongous salaries and allowances. In the face of the current economic and financial crisis, prudent financial management practices must be adopted.
With the recent Supreme Court judgment mandating the direct release of funds to local governments, they called for effective monitoring to ensure local government resources are efficiently used. They also urged other stakeholders to support efforts to reduce poverty in the country.
Overarching thing is to ensure that we're able to contribute to lifting 5 million people out of poverty.
If you have 20 organizations doing what Action Aid is doing, we will definitely eradicate poverty. We'll definitely eradicate poverty or get 100 million persons out of poverty in Nigeria in the next 10 years.
The Action Aid Nigeria also demands substantial improvement in security measures and intelligence gathering to combat kidnappings and terrorism in the country. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Well, that's a report coming from Idong Joseph looking at the removal of fuel subsidy. Well, many have said that the bane of the current President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's current challenges, if you put it that way, has to do with the statement, subsidy is gone. But then again, is subsidy really gone? You do have former governors who have come out to say, former governor El-Rufai, and not forgetting to another governor have come out to say that subsidy is still being paid. Also, you have a PDP chieftain who also came forward to say it's high time that the president allows or lets Nigerians know if subsidy truly is gone. And then you have the Minister of the Economic Estate talking about Wale Edu, who had come out, Osauge, as well, to mention that $600 million is paid monthly. And by my calculation, if you do that, you're looking at a total of almost about 7.2 billion that's being paid. Yeah. So the question is subsidy really gone? Or we're still paying for subsidy through the back door? These are the conversations.
Right from when the statement was made, and weeks and months that, followed after, it has been one thing that the current administration has still not been able to be clear about to Nigerians. There's nobody who you would ask the question now that would give you a clear answer as to whether Nigerians are still paying subsidy or not, especially from the government. And that, for me, has raised or been one of the reasons that I believe that many Nigerians have lost faith and lost trust with the current administration because they do not see honesty with it. And it's, I think it was one of the things that was also said before the End Bad Governance protest, that if the president is honest with Nigerians as to what exactly we are dealing with, where exactly we are, if subsidy has truly been removed or not, at least it gives Nigerians some level of, it makes Nigerians trust the government more. Instead of simply saying subsidy is gone, but we can clearly see that we're still paying subsidy with the current exchange rate, and the expected landing cost of petrol to Nigeria. So, it's that lack of clarity that I think is one of the biggest problems with the current administration. And if they do not fix that issue, Nigerians would almost never, trust that they seem to, they're doing the right thing or they're leading us in the right direction. And it's a general picture with the whole petroleum sector, and I started the show this morning by sharing my views on the petroleum sector and the mismanagement with Nigeria's petroleum sector and the fact that we still have not been able to do things different from the previous administration and even the one before him, with the criticism that the Yaradua, the Goodluck Ebele Jonathan government all received with the management of the petroleum sector. We still aren't doing things different. We're doing about the same thing and promising that we'll see different results, which is not realistic in any way.
It has led to the question of, should the president actually also play the role of the Minister of Petroleum?
I said it. I don't agree that that's what it should be. Mr. President should be president. Ministers should be ministers. Yes, we understand that we have called for a reduction in the cabinet and, of course, to reduce the cost of governance, but the president should not be the one to handle the responsibility of the Ministry of Petroleum, because the president is never answerable. When there's issues in the ministry, it's not like we can see Mr. President and ask him, what's wrong with your ministry?
Exactly.
We then defer to the junior minister or we defer to the head of the NNPC. But Mr. President, as Minister of Petroleum, is never questioned as to the management of that ministry. So I don't agree. But we, of course, will move on to other things this morning. Let's take a very short break, and when we come back, we continue with our discussions this morning on Breakfast Central. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. How are you today?
Very well. Thanks for joining us.
All right, sir. Can you help us tilt down your laptop? Just tilt down a little.
We actually get the support to.
Okay. All right.
This better?
Yeah, this is good. This is good. We just need you to move. Yes, just move a little to your left. A little. Just a tiny. Yeah. Okay. Director, you good? Okay, tilt down a little.
Fine.
Just bring it down a little. A little more. Just a little more. Or you come forward a little. Thanks for staying with us at Breakfast Central. Now, despite being inactive for over 40 years, the Ajaokuta Steel Company has received 38.9 billion naira in salaries and allowances for its workers between 2014 and 2024. Now, the Punch newspaper recently made a report that the company, which has not produced a single piece of steel since its inception, continues to receive substantial annual budget allocations actually from the government.
Now, experts have described the situation as a waste of resources and called for privatization or public-private partnership to revamp the company. The federal government has also announced plans to revive the steel mill, but no progress has been made. Lawmakers have questioned the justification for continued payment of salaries to workers who are not producing anything. Joining us is the Executive Director, Global Peace and Life Rescue Initiative, Melvin Eje. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. This is a project that has outlived about 16 presidents. This is a 40-year-long project that, it's one of the biggest stains, in my opinion, in Nigeria's history. The fact that we have this project that has not produced one sheet of steel since inception. Is there any justification for, the fact that we're still paying salaries running into billions of naira in 2024?
Away from that, let me use this opportunity to share my thought on the humanity crisis in Benue State right now. Let me condemn the barbaric attack yesterday in Iguma community of Ogule in Agatu local government area, where the entire community were sacked from their home. As I speak to you now, there is no house standing in that community, and people are very comfortable moving freely and talking about their normal businesses around Abuja. I think it's high time the government need to act more responsibly, more proactive to ensure that these headers are brought to the book. While I must say the criminal Fulanis are very few, there are very good Fulanis who actually want peace in the country. These criminals must be shown their way out of their community. People are already hungry. People are already going through a lot in this country. So there's no reason why you enter into a community and sack people, women and children, leaving them in a devastating effect of this hardship. The country is already very hard. So this act of sacking communities in Benue State, around Agatu local government, around Apa local government should stop henceforth. The security need to be on top of their toll. The military, the Operation White Stroke, the Nigerian police need to wake up from their slumber and attack this issue squarely. Thank you. Let me go to your question of Ajaokuta Steel Mill. I don't think I want to blame the workers because it is not their responsibility to sack themselves. They cannot resign, of course. If they are getting free salaries, of course they should continue working. The government who ought to know what to do is not doing the right thing, because you can't keep people who are not working forever. For 10 years, you kept them there and you're paying them salary. For me, I think that they are using these workers as conduit pipe. But I don't blame them for taking salary. If government pay them, they should take salary. Because me, if the government pay me, if government pay me, I'm going to take salary. If they have been there, it's not like they don't want to work. They want to work, but they don't have the needed equipment. The steel is moribund. So what are they going to do? They don't have the funds to revive the moribund steel. It is not the workers' fault. The fault lies squarely on the part of government. For me, one of the reasons they are still paying them today, one of the reasons they are still funding Ajaokuta Steel Mill is because that place is a conduit pipe. Some people are using it as cash cow to make their money against the current situation in Nigeria. So government must look into that issue critically. But I don't blame the workers. The workers should take the salary and continue to rejoice. It's not their fault.
All right. Let's take a look at, sometimes it's good to have in comparison what other steel manufacturing or other companies are doing outside of Nigeria. Let's take a look at the Steel Authority of India. Commissioned just 6 years before the Ajaokuta Steel Company was commissioned, 1973, and Ajaokuta Steel Company, 1979. And as we speak till today, SAIL continues to exist. If we look at the numbers, the figures of what it was, it has produced and what it was said to have brought in 2022, 2023, we're talking about close to about $18.29 million. Imagine injecting this into the economy and so on. Now, back to the Ajaokuta, we have other countries who equally have their steel working. Can you in any way share with us, is there any reason why Nigeria seems not to get it right, especially with companies that are under a government's purview? Is there any reason why we don't get it right? We have a similar instance with NITEL, and then moving to MTEL and so on and so forth. And here is also Ajaokuta. Is there something that we're not really doing well that the leaders need to take note of?
I think you just said it all. The problem we have in Nigeria is perennial corruption. We have ardent corrupt officials in Nigerian government, and I don't think up to this moment they have stopped. If we tackle corruption, we would have tackled 70% of Nigerian problem. We have all the know-how, we have all the human resources, we have all the natural resources, we have all the brains in Nigeria. When you go out of this country, you see the best brains you see everywhere, even the steel industries and Nigeria, medical industries and Nigeria. So what we have in Nigeria is mismanagement of the highest order. It's public officers who have been very, very irresponsible over the year. It didn't start from Tinubu's government, in fairness to him. From successive governments have continued to use that Jakarta steel mill as conduit pipe. They will inject in money, nothing will happen there. Injecting money year in and out. So I think what we have there is corruption. Government need to focus in its interest in that very place to ensure that we begin to produce this steel. Nigerian is going down on a daily basis. That company alone can inject a lot of money in Nigeria and even Africa. But some persons have turned into their cash cow. The Nigerian government need to totally overhaul Ajakuta steel mill. So the major issue why government companies don't work is because it's corruption. There is no patriotism. People don't take it very serious. People don't look at it as their private property. If you look at the companies that are functioning today in Nigeria, they are private-owned companies. So government in Nigeria should have no business in doing business. And if they do, it should be manned by people of integrity. It should be closely watched by anti-graft agencies. It should be closely watched by people who have business in such sector. You can't bring an environmentalist to go and head a Jakarta steel mill. Sometimes, instead of appointing the right guys, we appoint people based on political consideration. So I think government need to be deliberate about it. Government need to set the issue of corruption. Government need to also work on the issue of putting square peg in square holes.
Yeah. I mean, square pegs and square holes, you know, that's an important point, you know, and I think that even transcends beyond Ajaokuta in the whole political space in Nigeria. But we keep hearing promises with regards reviving Ajaokuta steel. Former President Muhammadu Buhari made the same promises. When he was leaving office, you know, it was regarded as one of his failed promises. And of course, you know, they said that they will move on to the next president to hopefully put it to work. You've stated that government needs the hands off. Would you advise the current administration to privatize the Ajaokuta steel project as a better way to handle that project? Or at this point, do we, you know, simply just let it go?
We have made too much investment to let it go. We have made too much investment. Nigeria has spent billions of dollars in that steel. So I think if I want to advise government is to give it to private owners, get investors from outside the country, get professionals from the steel industry, and privatize it. Let private sectors take over that business. I want to assure you that in 1 year, it will be up and Nigeria will start producing steel. What is wrong with Nigeria for crying out loud? We have no business in Ajaokuta steel mill. I think President Tinubu should stop spending money henceforth on Ajaokuta steel mill and get experts from abroad, get experts within Nigeria to sell that company or privatize it so that Nigerian can begin to get some revenues from that very place. Enough of this nonsense that we call injecting money into Ajaokuta steel mill on a daily basis. For me, I will insist that has become a cash cow. That has become a conduit pipe for some ministries. That has become a conduit pipe for some government functionaries. Every government that is campaigning in Nigeria today, every president wants to come in with Ajaokuta steel mill to campaign. And as they leave, the place will still be moribund. So I think this scam is okay. They should get people who know how to do the business from abroad, from Nigeria, from every continent in the world to man Ajaokuta steel mill. We need to begin to make money from that place. We need to get more jobs. If Ajaokuta steel mill is working, more than 10,000 graduates can begin to have jobs in Nigeria. So my personal opinion is that it should be prioritized. It should be given to people who actually knows about steel, people who actually have interest of steel, people who will manage a company like theirs, and they will take very good care of it. Until that is done, we'll continue to rigmarole on this Ajaokuta steel mill until maybe Nigeria finishes.
That rigmarole part is what a lot of Nigerians will not want to hear, especially on a Monday morning like this when the economy is faced with steep challenges. But let's look at accountability. Let's also look at the anti-graft agency. Many have wondered why the anti-graft agency is not beaming its torchlight, especially to where it ought to. Looking at the fact that the Ajaokuta steel has been in existence and has been moribund for a long time, one would ordinarily think that by now heads would roll, as it were. What's your take on the anti-graft agency accountability and, most importantly, what the present administration had promised, just like the previous one, that once they get in, they would ensure that there will be no room for anyone who has committed any form of crime or stealing?
Well, that's a very huge promise, but I think it's very almost impossible in Nigeria for the corruption to be tackled overnight. It's very impossible, even though it's doable, but I think it's possible because it has eaten deep into the fabric of society in Nigeria. The problem we have majorly are some of these civil servants. For me, I prefer to call some of them evil servants. They are not civil servants. They are evil servants because some of them are thieves. They will steal so neatly that even if anti-graft agency beaming the satellite, it will be difficult to trace these things. Yes, it's possible. The graph guys can go in and really do a lot there. But some of them are so used to systematic stealing, systematic corruption. So it is even difficult to trace some of the theft. Like this kind of moribund Ajakuta steel mill. It's very unfortunate that EFCC and ICPC have not clamped down on the spending. They should probe it from 1999. Even if they're not probing from 1979, they should probe in funds that have gone in. And I want to assure you that several heads will roll. But when Nigerians do it, who are involved? Who will have the guts to do it? Who will have the guts to arrest those who have stolen our money? The monies that have gone into Ajakuta Steel Mill alone, it's enough to revive the entire Nigerian economy. We are losing these monies on a daily basis. And President Tinubu is about spending another money. He just spent another money in paying worker salary. For me, I don't blame worker salary because the workers are there. They have not been laid off. They have families like you and I. They have their uncles, their aunties, their fathers. Of course, they should be paid. If government have not laid them off, if the company is not working, and government have not laid them off, they should be paid. They deserve their wage. They should be paid. It's not their fault that the company is not functioning. So I think Mr. President should hands off Ajakuta Steel Mill and give it to private individuals to manage. Give it to private sectors to manage. Now, the president needs to know about this. Nigerians are tired of hearing that name Ajakuta Steel Mill on a daily basis. We have continued to rigmarole. We have continued to move from one point to the same point, one point to the same point since 1979. Enough of this coming Ajakuta Steel Mill. So Nigerian needs to beg the president to hands off from the steel mill and give it to individuals, companies that are professionals in this steel mill. I don't think we should spend any dime on Ajakuta Steel Mill again. Then I'm calling on anti-graft agencies to beam the satellite in that sector. They must beam the satellite in Ministry of Steel. They must begin to look at the officials who are money from 1999, money that have gone in, and they should probe it. We need to begin to probe Ajakuta Steel Mill because enough of this nonsense, enough of this stealing, enough of this corruption.
Well, Mr. Melvin, there's also arguments that the idea of reviving the steel complex may not even be necessary anymore because at first, one of the reasons that it didn't work was because it was poorly planned. There was issues with the planning and setting it up in Ajakuta in the first place. The availability of raw materials, transportation, and those rail lines that were initially set up, some of all those things were poorly planned. So, and then also, I think I saw a report, from 2022 that the quality of iron ore that is available in Nigeria may not even be up to standard anymore. Do you think that those are things that we must consider if we're going forward with the project?
Yeah, while we're considering that, we should also know that we still have good quality of iron ore in Nigeria. I disagree. I also have a lot of experience in mining. We have a lot of iron ores in Nigeria, very quality ones. In fact, when we take our iron ores out of the country, it's one of the best. So I do not agree with some of those school of thoughts. I have interest in mining, and I think I know about mining. That is not correct. However, if you're talking about the planning, how the rail, the planning, transportation, all of that, Nigerians should look into it. Give it to a private investor. He knows what to do with it. Even if it's not going to serve as a steel mill, it can serve as something. My first point is that give it to a private investor who is grounded in that area, who is grounded in managing resources, in managing companies. I tell you, they will turn it around. So the issue of whether it was properly planned, it may be true because maybe it was done easily to score political points at that very time. But these things can be looked into. These things can be addressed. These things can actually be restructured and will get back the company back. Even if we're not producing iron ore, there are a lot of iron steel. There are a lot of things we can do from Ajakuta Steel Mill. It's not just the iron, the steel. There are a lot of things we can do from that company. It is meant to be multidimensional. It is meant to function multiply, so it can do other things apart from the steel. So I think the company first should get to work. The company first should begin to produce something. Nigeria needs to begin to produce something with that place. Give it to an investor, give it to a professional to man that place. This is my point, and I will keep on repeating it.
All right. Well, let's see, if the current administration thinks in that direction as well. Like you said, a lot of them use these things to score political points while campaigning and whatnot. The present administration did it. They've been doing it for a long time. And it seems to be a conduit pipe where billions and billions of naira just continue to be washed away. Melvin Eja, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We look forward to speaking with you again. And of course, we'll highlight the issues with insecurity in Benue State. I'm happy that you started with it. Those lives absolutely matter. I don't think it's even made headlines this morning. But thanks for bringing it up.
Nobody cares about it.
Yeah, very unfortunate. We will highlight that, and of course, if we maybe we schedule a separate conversation for you to join us and speak about that.
Thank you. I'll be happy because that area has been under siege for more than 1 month now.
All right. Thanks a lot. See you again. All right. Of course, the Ajaokuta Steel conversation continues, and we will continue to explore that conversation as time passes. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we continue this morning with Breakfast Headline, Breakfast Central. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has agreed to consider a new constitution for Nigeria following a meeting with a group of eminent Nigerians known as the Patriots. The group, led by former Commonwealth Secretary General Chief Emeka Anyaoku, presented a proposal for a new national constitution, or Constituent Assembly, to draft a new constitution. The Patriots emphasized the need for a democratic people's constitution to address the country's political and economic challenges, including separatist agitations, insecurity, and national protest. They also urged the president to initiate a national dialogue with leaders of nationwide protests and to refrain from using lethal weapons on protesters.
And this is not a group that you ignore. It's a group of patriots reflecting the heart and aspiration of the society, listening to the past cries of constitutional reform. Yes, I've had your examples and a thoughtful presentation on this subject. I'm still preoccupied with thinking and tinkering with the economic reform. That's my first priority. Once I get that reform in place as soon as possible, then I look at other options. The option of constitutional review, as recommended by you, and other options of learned minds in this country.
Well, joining us to discuss this, we do have in the studio with us political analyst Nelson Ekujimi. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And we also have joining us virtually, Mr. Dayo Akintobi also joins us. Thank you for being here this morning, gentlemen. Let's go straight into the conversation. There are indeed clarity, or you could say statements made clear that the current Nigerian constitution was indeed drafted and handed down by the military regime, and it's high time that there should be a change. Let me start off first with you, Mr. Ekujimi. Do you think that the president has what it takes to carry out this request to put out and ensure that there's a new formulation of a new constitution?
Well, thank you very much. I think first and foremost, I want to disagree with your opening statement that the president has agreed. The president never agreed. If you listen to him, he said, now I'm preoccupied with economic issues. After that, I will look at your requests, like also the requests of other Nigerians. Yes, I agree that our constitution needs to be reviewed, and which the National Assembly has been doing periodically. But by and large, you recognize that we've had different constitutional assembly or conferences. Even civil society organizations even had one called the Pronaco Draft Constitution. So these Nigerians who have gone to Mr. President to voice their concerns about the state of the nation, you can be rest assured that as I'm sitting down here, when I saw them visit Mr. President, I was also thinking, which we are also going to do. I'm also a member of, I'm also in the class of eminent Nigerians. So we also have our own view about this issue. So they have exercised their rights, just like every other Nigerian also has a right too. But most importantly, I want to believe strongly that the 11th National Assembly, like we currently have, the Senate and the House of Representatives, will soon embark on a constitutional review, process. So for me, they are going there does not take anything away from the fact that the review of the Constitution to ensure that it aligns with the socio-economic realities of the Nigerian people, comes into fruition. And, that is what we are interested in.
All right. We'll have Dayo Akintobi also join us and share his views. Mr. Akintobi, quickly, your thoughts on the idea of a constitutional review. I've seen and heard arguments that say that we don't necessarily need to review the Constitution. I remember that former President Muhammadu Buhari did make some adjustments and sign some bills that seemed like it was a constitutional review here and there, granting independence to State House of Assembly and the judiciary and whatnot. But the argument really is that we have a constitution that could work. What we don't have is governments that respect the tenets of the Constitution. And that's where our challenge is. What are your thoughts, with regards to that?
Well, truth be told, there's no constitution in the world that can guarantee good governance, which is what we all want at the end of the day. So whether it's the constitution we currently apply to our lives or a restructured constitution, at the end of the day, good governance comes before any kind of a constitution. And that's what we can't guarantee by virtue of writing a new one. So yes, the whole idea about the fact that this constitution was foisted upon us by the military, it wasn't democratically debated and upheld, and many of its tenets seem to be against the dictates of a pluralistic society. It's clearly divisive. It doesn't encourage unity. It has a lot of flaws. And as you said, previous governments have attempted to correct some of its flaws, but this is cherry picking some of the low-hanging fruits that don't create a wholesale realignment or readjustment of the document itself. And so it looks like a complete rewriting is what is in order, but are we ever going to get that? I'm not really sure, because at the end of the day, the politicians who have the wherewithal to enable us come up with a new document, it works against their own interest. This notion of restructuring, devolution of power, they see it as diminishing their individual powers. What we are seeking to do is to reduce the power of the individual politicians, and they are against that. So I wasn't surprised when the president said, economic reform is my focus at this point in time. I really don't have time to address your issue now, but I'll put it on the back burner and get back to it when I put it to you that economic reform is not something that's going to be solved in 3 years. So I don't see where the president will actually have the kind of will to push this thing through, because he's a politician just like everybody in the National Assembly is as well. And so it works against his interest for this constitution to be changed. So he probably will offer us a sop here and there whereby they'll amend one or two tenets that don't take away from the core things that are the interests of the politicians.
All right. Let's look at the process that's also being requested for by this group known as the Patriots. I mean, they're saying that there should be a constituent assembly where 3 persons are picked from the 36 states to represent each state, and all will converge on Abuja and take a look at this constitution that needs to be reformed. Mr. Kujumi, let me come to you again. 3 persons per state to form this constituent assembly. Does that really seem like what will work?
Well, I'm as confused as you are, and maybe other Nigerians. Because if you are talking about a constitution that will emanate from the people like the patriots, a posture, you expect that they should have said election of this. So who does the selection?
They said the selection, the people should be non-political.
Oh, they can look at any human being and decide or interrogate and discover that it's non-political. I don't agree with them. Like I've just told you, we've had series of constitutional conference, committees, you can name it. What is wrong with us saying these reports, look at the recommendations, take it to the National Assembly and let them, do their job? Because the National Assembly is a product of the democratic will of the Nigerian people. They hold our mandate. These persons who have made this suggestion, I want to tell you for free, they don't represent the will of the Nigerian people because they don't have our mandate. They are making a personal group opinion on it, just like I'm doing right here. So if we want what we are all clamoring for, we want a democratic constitution that will emanate from the people, then let the people themselves decide, let people put themselves up for election, let the people vote them. But if you ask me, I would say we've had enough of this constitution making jamboree. Because you can be rest assured that even some of the members of these patriots, when it comes to picking, some of them will be picked. Because they are advantaged.
Yeah.
So don't.
If you call it, before you go on, if you call it a jamboree,
yeah,
are you saying that you don't believe that we should have any adjustments to the constitution, or you don't think it's necessary to beat around the bush before doing it? We should just go straight to it. And then also, what adjustments would you recommend to the current administration if they were going to make a constitutional amendment?
One thing we must all recognize and acknowledge is that this president is somebody who believes in the restructuring of the Nigerian state. He has clamored for it all through the years, even during the days of the military dictatorship. But the fact remains that we've had, I'm voicing my opinion. The patriots went to him, and I'm here making my own presentation.
Absolutely.
I believe our constitution is not perfect. Just like you can never have a perfect constitution anywhere in the world. Our constitution is not cast in stone. That is why the National Assembly at every legislative cycle does a constitutional review. Nigerians, what are those lacuna that you have observed in the constitution? Can we discuss them? And you have seen the former president did a sort of a restructuring. Somehow, you talked about the issue about state police, which even the present administration is latching onto. You talked about autonomy of local government that we have seen. You talked about power generation that was formerly on the exclusive list, but is now on the concurrent list. Those are things we have all clamored for. That look, we shouldn't have a centralized system in a federal republic. So I don't believe in this beating about the bush, because I understand the issues, and the issues are that we've had series of conferences, we've had reports. Why don't we go to the National Assembly and say, look at these documents, look at where they address the issues of the Nigerian people, and do the needful. So, but telling us that you should have a constituent assembly of 3 picked. Are they going to be picked by Nelson? Except if you are going to allow me to pick them.
Well, maybe when we have one of the guests join us, then the further explanation can be given. But then again, let's also get your thoughts on this, Second Toby.
Yes, the Patriots actually did say that they would like a process that looks at the 1960 and 1963 Constitution and also takes a look at the recommendations of the 2014 Constitution committee put together by the Jonathan administration. So I don't think they were saying start completely from scratch. And of course, they just put forward some recommendations that can be tweaked. The fact that they had an idea that 3 people from each state and one lawyer from each region. That can be adjusted. That's not cast in stone. I think the 60 and 63 Constitution is a good starting point. Some of the recommendations of that Justice Kutigi-led conference also resonated with the people. Many Nigerians have admired some of the recommendations and have recommended that they be uptaken. So as Nelson has said, what's wrong with taking those recommendations to the National Assembly and letting them deliberate and decide on behalf of the people? Do we really need to go through such a cumbersome and expensive exercise of electing people to a constitutional conference? I mean, process is important, yes, but for it to be a truly democratic document, it's got to be the will of the people. And at the moment, the people do have their elected representatives in place who can speak for them. So I do align with Nelson's thinking that why not push it to the National Assembly? I believe it will die a natural death there anyway, because as I said earlier, I think it works against the interest of the National Assembly.
And that's a good point that you're making, because I remember that there was the national conference in Goodluck Ebele Jonathan government that was discarded by the Buhari administration. They had their own reasons for not looking at it. But a couple of points were made in that national conference that many Nigerians argued would have maybe set Nigeria on a better footing if it was implemented. Do you, from your perspective, does the current National Assembly represent the Nigerian people? Do you believe that it speaks the interest of the Nigerian people as headed by Senate President, the current Senate President?
Well, let me tell you this. There is no politician or group of politicians that sit to represent the people's interest first. Their primary interest is to themselves prior to thinking about the people. So probably you should rephrase that question and say, is the present National Assembly more inclined towards representing the people or speaking for the people than previous National Assemblies? And I would say I haven't seen any difference since 2023. I haven't seen any difference in governance today from previous times. I would even venture to say we're actually worse off today based on what our representatives are doing than we were in the past. So I don't really foresee a wholesale change. I see more of the status quo, not just from this administration and our representatives, but even from the next one. I see more of the same, because a wholesale readjustment just doesn't work to their benefit. And so until more and more groups like the Patriots, more and more individuals begin to clamor for this total change, and I think the way to do it is at the ballot box. I think we're not holding those who campaign to hold our suffrages, we're not holding them to account enough when they are campaigning. I think come 2027, we should begin to ask questions of the people who put themselves forward to represent us in terms of this notion of restructuring. Those who are there now, I don't think there's any of them we can hold to a promise. Look at the president, for example. He campaigned on the notion of restructuring. He promised he would look at it. He's doing some things. He's talked about state police. He's talked about some other things. And even the previous administration did one or two things relating to moving things from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. But wholesale restructuring, we haven't really begun to see any major moves towards it. So I think we, the people, it's incumbent upon us to make it happen. If we're waiting for other people to do it, those in power to do it, it's never going to happen. So I think the Patriots have made a good first step. The rest of us should now begin to follow up, begin to apply pressure, begin to prepare ourselves for 2027, and let the people who want to represent us in 2027 begin to state their positions today as to what they would do about a new constitution if they are elected into office.
Yeah, well, I just fear that we're not there yet. I would like to see a Nigeria where the reasons presidents are elected into office are because of the principles that they stand by and the ideas that they have. But unfortunately, we're not there yet, if we're being honest. Ms. Aikujumi, let's have you, of course, share your thoughts with regards to that. the representation of the Nigerian people by the current members of the National Assembly. Do you believe in them? Do you trust that they have the interests of the Nigerian people, including Senator Godswill Akpabio, who's the Senate President, and the members of the House of Representatives?
Well, thank you very much. I believe strongly that the Nigerian people are politically, conscious enough to elect people to represent them, and I will see it as an insult on the collective intelligence of Nigerian people for anybody to say those that the people elected them in error. For example, as I'm sitting down here, I'm educated enough. And on election day, I went to the poll and I elected these persons to represent my interests. So for you to now say they will be representing other interests than my mandate that I've given them, I disagree with you.
But the thing really is, what were the principles that you listened to that made you elect?
The principles that were the things they were going to do, they campaign on different, election was done in different constituencies, and our problems are not the same. Like we say, what is one man's meat is another man's poison. So my representative that I voted for, they are representing my interests. You talked about
what is the interest?
Just a minute. You talked about, do they represent the Nigerian people that you are talking about? What is their own interest? The elected representatives, did they fall down from the moon? Are they not part of our family, our friends, our relations? Don't we live in the same community?
No, but so, what I'm trying to be clear on is your House of Rep member for your local government.
Yes.
What did he say that convinced you that he's representing your interests? Same thing with the senator representing you.
He campaigned on a manifesto. And I aligned with that manifesto. Because
what were the things in the manifesto?
Well, you want me to start itemizing them? Yeah. Maybe I need to open my phone for you to see.
No. I mean, because if you say you were convinced.
He talked about good governance.
What is good governance?
Good governance is about holding consultative dialogue with your constituents at every time. If there are pressing issues, then you go back there and place it before the other members of the national. And it doesn't mean if you have a proposal that it will see the light of the day over there, because every representative in the National Assembly are representing their constituents' interests. So it is about you negotiating. It is about you dialoguing with them that, look, this thing that I want to bring to you, maybe, for example, you are talking about, establishment of boreholes or maybe primary health care centers. I'm using that as a case study.
Which is what is usually done.
Yes. So it is for you to convince them why we should align with this, because if a primary health center is cited in my local government, you can be rest assured that that bill will not be a bill for my own constituency alone. It will be a national, law.
These are broad terms. Apologies, Dayo Akintobi. We're going to wrap up in a bit, but these are broad terms. What I'm trying to be specific on is, what were the things that your senator said that convinced you that he is the right person to lead you and other members of
what my senator said that convinced me to cast my lot with him, just like other people.
Who's the senator?
My senator is a Senator Idiat Oluwanti Adebule. I come from the Lagos West.
Okay.
Yes.
So what were the things that
I looked at that pedigree, and I looked at those things within the purview of a legislature that he promised to do.
Now, what are the things? What are the things?
Oh, bringing the issue of dividends of democracy to my people in terms of making bills or making laws for the good governance of the country.
And has that been achieved so far?
In a year, out of a 4-year tenure?
No, I mean, even previously, before her, there was someone else there.
Yes.
Has all of these things from the promise?
No, you see, the mistake we make is that we are looking for quick fix.
Okay.
Yes, but I believe that we are in this vehicle, and we also must recognize that we have a responsibility to put them on their toes. But if you think because you have voted them in, you should go to sleep and expect miracle to happen tomorrow morning, then you must be analyst.
So the person representing you in the Senate simply said they would bring the dividends of democracy, and
which
that was
is
enough.
Embodied in a basket. You know what?
So if anybody, that's what I'm saying. So if anybody,
do you expect me to tell you that she said she's going to give me employment?
So 2027.
No, I mean there has to be certain things that they would speak about. That you can say, okay, this represents my interest. So if anybody, so what you're saying is that anybody who says to you, I will bring you dividends of democracy.
Yes, and she will speak in the specifics
But you failed to name those specifics. That's the problem.
What do you expect? You expect me to tell you that she's going to build roads in my local government? Is that our responsibility? That's the responsibility of the executive.
Dayo
As is lawmaking.
Thank you very much. What I'm just trying to highlight here is the fact that we elect people in office without actually knowing what the little details. I mean, if you look at, and it's not comparing us to the United States because that might be too far, but if you look at the little details with which they interview every candidate that is running for election in the United States, they want to know their values. They want to know what their thoughts are on maternal mortality, on infant mortality, on human development index, human capacity, HDI. They want to know those little details, what they think about religion, what they think about children. Those little details. But in Nigeria, and this is what I'm trying to establish with Mr. Ekujimi here, that there's nothing. We have the people that he's speaking about, that he's proud of, that represent him. He's not been able to identify one thing and point out one thing, that this is the thing that has convinced me that this person represents my interests and the interests of millions of other people with regards the improvement of our lives. A broad dividends of democracy really doesn't cut it. But thanks a lot, Nelson Ekujimi. I always enjoy speaking with you. We always have this back and forth.
Yes.
Dayo Akintobi, thank you very much for your time as well. We'll see you again soon.
Cheers.
All right.
All right.
Anyway, let's bring to you a quick recap of what we've talked about so far for the first hour here on Breakfast Central. So far, so good. First hour, I will review requests for new constitution, President Tinubu says, and that's a discussion we just had, looking deeply into the conversations as well. Ideal. Ajaokuta workers paid 38.9 billion naira in 10 years, according to reports. And we looked at that as well. And group calls for reversal of fuel subsidy removal. One thing that Nigerians are still talking about, that brought about the hashtag End Bad Governance. But let's bring to you what's coming up next in the second hour here on Breakfast Central. Coming up next, Senate tackles Obasanjo, denies fixing members' salaries. And we do have the front pages to look into as well here on Breakfast Central. And don't forget, today is a Monday. We've got Which Way Nigeria with us, Zaria. Stay with us. We'll be right back. It's time for our front pages here on Breakfast Central. Let's take a look at what the papers are saying. And joining us this morning, we do have Public Affairs and Director Special Programs, Nigerian Institute of Journalism, the one who talks tough and, of course, does not hold back. Jide Johnson joins us again. You can say AKJJ.
It's a pleasure to
Good to have you.
Good morning to our viewers all over the world. Thank you for having me.
Great. All right, let's take a look at the papers we'll be looking at. Let's start off with the very first one this morning. The Vanguard is our very first paper, and on the front page of the Vanguard, as you can see there, end blame game, halt bad policies, Labour, Obi, Lukman tell Tinubu, stop blaming others for the problems the country is going through, the economic hardship and the likes. Labour alleges harassment, intimidation of members by government, says invasion of Labour House, deliberate attempt at provocation. Condemns plans to frame up innocent citizens on trumped-up charges. Also, protests call for leadership action against growing poverty. Obi says, hunger protests enough grounds to impeach Tinubu, according to Lukman. That's another angle to this headline. Show of shame, 9 billion naira wasted, 88 athletes, no medal, no single one. And then again, monkeypox, federal government directs travelers to Nigeria to fill health declaration form. That's an update. And then we have this final one I'm going to take, and it says 10 die in Abia truck accident, 25 missing in Sokoto boat mishap. But let's start off with what we see here on the Vanguard. Osange.
All right. And from the Vanguard, let's move to this Nigeria newspapers this morning. Obasanjo bombs National Assembly and government officials, says it's wrong for legislators to fix their salaries. Most of those in office today should be in jail or executed. You're wrong, Senate spokesman says his government was more corrupt. Ubunobla, Buhari's aide, also responds. Sarap to Tinubu, probe $1.5 billion World Bank and $3 billion Chinese loans to 36 states, says the federal government. Bank subscriptions, why many Nigerians are skeptical. Also, NDLEA recovers multi-billion naira drugs in nationwide raids. As we also have here, multiple regulatory fees and levies are killing manufacturing firms in Nigeria. Jide Johnson, I'm going to just go straight to I think let's start with the one on probing $1.5 billion World Bank and $3 billion Chinese loans, 36 states. And that says from Serap to President Tinubu. So first of all, let's get your thoughts on the whole idea of the $3 billion Chinese loans that were sent to Chinese to the 36 states, $1.5 billion World Bank loan to the states as well. The Nigerian people didn't seem to feel the impact of those loans.
Well, until the Ulabalu about we've given 570 billion to the state governors and the state governor coming out
that's the latest.
To contest whether the money is from the federal government or it's from a loan, COVID loan. And a lot of Nigerians never knew where the money is coming from. Even as we speak, we don't even know the source of this money. There seems to be a lot of secrecy and lack of transparency on the part of government, either at the state level and the federal level, with respect to how we source funds for projects in Nigeria. So a lot of it is covered in secrecy, so a lot of Nigerians are not even sure. And then when it's covered in secrecy, we don't even know how this money are disbursed, whether this money are disbursed or whether this money, even when this money are disbursed, we don't even know the project that this money are being spent on. And you have the State House of Assembly that are meant to do the oversight. You have the National Assembly that are meant to do the oversight function. And they are not even doing the proper oversight function. All what they do is once they are settled with one form of constituency project or the other, they just turn a blind eye to what is happening concerning these funds that are coming. And this debt are being imposed on you and I. Even our unborn great-grandchildren will come back to come and pay this debt. If you are getting these loans and you are investing this loan in capital projects, in infrastructure, which invariably will contribute to the development of the economy, you say, okay, you are on the right track. But in most cases, these loans goes to private project, private enterprise, or pet project of either the governor, his wife, or what have you, to boost their ego and not to bring critical changes to our economy and development. So as far as I'm concerned, we don't even have clear-cut transparency with respect to the state of our economy, with respect to the state of how we source funding, either through loans, direct or indirect loans from World Bank, from IMF, from Chinese. The latest one is Chinese. You know why we are growing up? It used to be World Bank and IMF. Yes. And then when Obasanjo administration came, we got debt relief concerning that. Then we have moved to another level in which African countries are predominantly relying on China for funding of their various projects in their various countries.
Well, many have said that they're relying because of the infrastructural ability that's coming from China, and looking at the fact that when you work with the Chinese, in quotes, it's easier. It's the loans are the form of repayment is not as cumbersome as that of the IMF. In quotes, that's what has been said. But these loans are being collected. I mean, the questions are equally being asked. Isn't it a cause for worry that the loans have been collected from years and years upon years? And let's be honest, how many infrastructure can we really point to? And
let's talk about, you know, I've said it, if you look at the men who built America, it's a documentary. One of the major transformations that changed America was the building of the railway system. What connected Canada together, Canada, one of the largest countries in the world, the Quebec region, and it's the railway. One of the things that brought about transformation in Nigeria is the railway. Now, one of the investment in which the last administration said they made investment on, got loans from, to the point that they even built a railway to Maradi in Niger Republic, is the railway. Now, I live very close to the railway. I've lived more than 50 years very close to the railway. My abode is not far from Iju Station, so I know everything about the railway. Is the railway functioning? All the funds we got for railway project under Buhari's administration, when Amici was Minister of Transportation, is it functioning? So when you see that this money are being gotten, and they talk about the infrastructure. The question you ask, what are the iconic infrastructure they built over time? Has Lagos-Ibadan Expressway been completed?
Has
it been completed? Now, it started with the Obasanjo administration. Jonathan took it up, then Buhari administration took it up, then the Super Minister of Works, Fashola, took it up. Has it been completed? Now, if you are talking about the Trunk A road, number one in Nigeria, is Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and it's not been completed. And people are talking about the infrastructure because they love the buzzword, because it's the buzzword they use to confuse people, to justify why they spend the money. We are spending the money on infrastructure. Break it down. We are spending on roads. We are spending on railway. We are building hospitals. We are building schools. Don't just bond it together and say we are building infrastructure. And once they use that buzzword, they are trying to convince us in order to change the narrative for people to actually know what they are spending money on. And I say this, infrastructure is just the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3 of public administration. Because anybody can do infrastructure. All you need to do is to get the design, and you have the fund, and you fund it. What government should be doing is, how are you providing avenues for industry to grow up? Industrialization. How many companies are established under your administration? Manufacturing jobs. What have you done concerning manufacturing sector? And what way have you built manufacturing sector? Which industrial estate have you been able to build? In the past, we used to have Agbara Industrial Estate. We have Ilupeju Industrial Estate. We have Maturu Industrial Estate. We have Ikeja Industrial Estate. Where are the estates that have been built since 1999 to date under this Fourth Republic, across the length and breadth of this country? But all they talk about is infrastructure. We have built roads. We have built this. We have built that. Those are ABC. Any simple thing can get that done. All you just need is the design, and you fund it. And then we begin to clap our hand, we roll out drums, and then we commission the project, and then we put ribbon, we cut it, and then we start dancing, we bring musicians, and the money that is spent to commission the project is much more than the project. And the project will be turned to a campaign ground, which is used to project and promote the political party that is elected to run the state.
All right. Just to remind our viewers, the phones are available. You can share your thoughts with us on any of the stories that we, of course, have put out from the newspapers this morning. Obasanjo bombs National Assembly and government officials, says it's wrong for legislators to fix their salaries, says ex-president, says most of them in office today should be jailed or executed. Some would say, they should start from him.
Well, Obasanjo is part and parcel of Nigerian problem, part and parcel of Nigerian solution. But if you begin to cross the T's and dot the I's, and you begin to classify them, at least to a large extent, it still enjoys some measure of credibility than most people that have governed Nigeria. The running battle Obasanjo had with National Assembly with respect to, we never knew what their allowances were until the furniture allowance, you recall, that came to town concerning that. Like I said, he's a major contributor to some of the challenges we have. He's also a major actor in addressing some of the problems which we have. As far as the issue of National Assembly is concerned, and what he said concerning a majority of the people that are in government today have been actors and players since 1999. You look at the Secretary to the Federal Government, was Governor of Benue State. You look at the Chief of Staff to the President, he was in the House of Reps from 2003 till 2024, and he became Chief of Staff. You look at the Senate President, he was Commissioner for local government, then he later became Governor, Senator, Minister, now Senate President. So if you look at all these actors and players, majority of them have been in government for a quarter of a century. They've been feeding fat on this nation. So like he said, a lot of them shouldn't even be in government today, because the reality of it is that they don't even know what it takes to run this country. And the way they go about it is that they perpetuate poverty. They perpetuate poverty so that during electoral cycle, they just drop crumbs for the people. They make people hungry, and then you give them rice, you give them beans, you make them to forget all the suffering of 4 years, and then they just go cast the ballot, and then after 4 years they come suffering and smiling, and the cycle continues. And so if Esau could sold his birthright as a result of piece of muscle, how much more mortal men? What would he not do for a cup of rice?
All right, let's also go to Dele. Good morning, Dele. Dele, good morning. Can you hear us?
Good morning, sir.
Morning. Welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Oh, David, I beg your pardon. Go ahead.
Making the young ones who have been working so hard to feel that living upright is not the right way to go. So, talking about constitutional reform, about all what the House of National Assembly, they are fixing salaries and everything. The first thing Nigerians will be talking about is getting our leaders to understand that leadership is not all about going to make money, going to amass wealth. You listen to, like, for instance, Joe Biden, I got to do a kind of research.
All right, okay, I'm afraid you have 1 more minute to go, so we can wrap this up. Can you just make your points clear so we can go on?
Okay. So my point is, our politicians, there should be a kind of review of that to know this is what this politician want before they get into power. so that when they leave office, we will now be able to assess them to know, did they actually acquire all the loans that will be borrowed to improve Nigerian the infrastructure? Did they actually acquire that into their pockets?
All right.
That's actually what the problem is.
Thank you. Thank you for your call.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, we've come to the end of the papers, but before we go, just one last, very briefly, we'd like you to just look at the issue of restructuring. What's your thought on that?
Well, we need it. It's important. The foundation determines the structure you build on the foundation. And the foundation of our society, of the present Fourth Republic, was built by a constitution that was put in place by the 12 noblemen led by Justice Nikitobi. Even the president that was sworn in under that constitution was not even aware, did not even got a copy of the constitution that he was sworn in the day he was sworn in. So there's a need for us to have a review, because it was an adaptation of the 1995 Constituent Assembly, which was meant to perpetuate Abacha as the sole president. That's why you see that there's an overwhelming power in the presidency of Nigeria, more than any other president you can ever think of. So there's a need for us to have a review, considering the multifaceted nature of Nigeria, so that we have a constitution that is truly Nigerian, that represents the diversity of the ethnicity and tribes that we have in this country.
All right.
So restructuring is a must.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Judy Johnson, thank you very much for stopping by and for speaking with us.
It's a pleasure to be with you guys always. Thank you for having me.
All right. Stay with us this morning. Let's take a very short break, and when we come back, we continue this morning with Breakfast Central. Of course, getting into Which Way Nigeria comes up right next. Now, over the weekend, I came across a post on X by a guy called Arinze Odira with the handle Captain Arinze. The post said, "You pay a price every time you lower your standards. This applies to everything in life." And I felt it was a perfect foundation for today's monologue. The price Nigerians have paid and are still paying for reducing our standards with regards to those we have allowed to take over positions of leadership in the last decade and arguably more. Now, many would argue that the quality of leadership that has defined our nation's growth trajectory has reduced in the last decade, and the results are as clear as day. Just take a look at what we've done to ourselves and take a look at what we've done to our country with our electoral choices. Choices that we made not in consideration strictly on the quality of options, but on tribe and religion and bribery and turn-by-turn dirty politics. How has one of the greatest nations on earth found itself being led by the quality of people that we have allowed in those positions? Governmental institutions being headed by people whose only skill is how to win elections, and others nominated to repay political favors, not because they have the slightest qualifications worthy of those positions. And this is a country filled with some of the most brilliant minds on the continent. Nigerians excelling in different parts of the world. How can that same country then pick leaders who can speak brilliantly for 10 minutes unaided? How did that same country and citizens say things like, even if it's NEPA certificate, we will vote him? Many would say that we should be ashamed of ourselves, because look at where NEPA certificate has brought Nigeria. I mean, what spirit really took over Nigerians to make such statements, including, of course, Victor Ekpeba there? A nation with some of the most brilliant people on earth. To have WAEC, if you remember, bring a certificate to our president in Aso Rock, and they took pictures with it as something to be proud of. Nigeria. The same Nigeria that has produced the likes of Wole Soyinka and Chinua Achebe, Akinwumi Adesina, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Chimamanda Adichie, Philip Emeagwali, Dora Akunyili, Seyi Oyeshola, many of them, many others. How did that same country produce leaders back to back that had questions about their certificates? Again, you pay a price every time you lower your standards, and Nigerians must improve on the quality of persons in leadership positions. We moved from President Buhari to now President Tinubu, and it's pretty clear that President Tinubu is doing the same thing as his predecessor, which is avoiding the media, avoiding the press. Our current president and past presidents, take a look across, don't have one single video where they sat with the media or a broad spectrum of Nigerians and just spoke brilliantly for 1 hour, convincing Nigerians. There's nowhere you'll find clips of Nigeria's current president speaking brilliantly to the issues that Nigerians face. There's nowhere you would find clips of Mr. President or his predecessors speaking to the international community and speaking brilliantly as the #1 face of our great nation. And many would argue that these persons in leadership today across all fields do not truly seem like a proper representation of the Nigerian people. And because of that, I say again that we must improve on the quality of persons that we hand the mantle of leadership. And then we must continue to raise those standards. And so if you want to lead Nigeria as brilliant and exceptional as we are as Nigerians, then you must be exceptional yourself to some level. And this increase in the standard of leadership will then reflect on the quality of decisions that our leaders make and the quality of our lives as Nigerians. People who can speak authoritatively on topics and make sense. Leaders who can process ideas and share knowledge on the economy, on science and technology, on security and agriculture, education, Human Development Index, female genital mutilation, infant and maternal mortality, and so much more. I'll say one more time that you pay a price every time you lower your standards. And we as Nigerians should get tired of paying that price. Good morning, Nigerians.
The Nigerian Senate has vehemently denied claims that it determines its own salaries or receives special financial benefits from the presidency. Senate spokesman Yemi Adaramodu described the allegations as political hypocrisy and emphasized that senators only receive constitutionally allocated salaries. He clarified that constituency projects are nominated by senators but awarded and funded by the executive arm of government.
I recall that former President Olusegun Obasanjo had criticized members of the Senate and House of Representatives on Friday, the 9th of August, while hosting 6 members of the House of Representatives. He accused them of independently determining their own salaries, calling the practice both immoral and unconstitutional. The Senate, in its response, challenged anyone with evidence to the contrary to come forward, reaffirming its commitment to upholding the economy and the growth of Nigeria. Joining us is social justice advocate and political analyst Zaria Yusuf. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to have you. First of all, let's start with some clarity as to, who is right or wrong here. The former president says that the House of Reps and the National Assembly determine their own salaries. The Senate says he's talking rubbish. What do you think is the truth?
The truth is what is coming from former President Olusegun Obasanjo. And the lie is basically what's coming from the senators. History will tell us that, and the person of the former president, I do not really think it's just a matter of old age where an elder went to bed, woke up and started saying things from out of nowhere. You would remember he ruled this country, as president for 8 years. And one thing that was characteristic of the senators at the time, I would say before they may have used the word, they matured out of what we would basically say, doing things in front of the camera and then, doing it behind closed doors. There was a time when matters of wardrobe allowance and all of that was, a thing of the past. So he encountered those things, and knowing fully well we were heavily indebted, I think much as it lied within his executive power, he controlled a couple of things. And we cannot basically take the words of the senators to mean anything, because we know exactly what they do, especially to members that try to just be transparent, to the Nigerian public. So it's a clear case of one person saying the truth and then the other lying. And in this case, former President Olusegun Obasanjo is right. And basically, I can outrightly say to you, the senators are lying.
All right. There are a lot of questions to ask. So many, especially if we look at where to go to from here. What do you think is the way forward in order for Nigerians to at least put a nail to it and say, let's finally put this to rest? Is it possible for the members of the Senate, you name them, public office holders, to eventually publish and let Nigerians know that this is what we receive monthly? We do also recall that they are also running costs of various offices, looking at the law that actually governs this. We've seen the law of certain political and public judicial office holders, salary and allowances, an Amendment Act in 2008 that talks about receiving salaries and also receiving monies to run offices. So do you think that it's high time there should be some form of clarity, publicly publishing these salaries for Nigerians to see?
Frankly speaking, I think a lot of overhauling is needed as far as the Nigerian system is concerned. If that came, it's likely they would do so. But an example is you would find senators telling you they earn their salary is just about 1.something million, 800,000. Some will tell you 400,000 when they were in the Senate. But that basically is not where they make all of the money. Like you said, there is the cost of running their office, which basically is huge. And I think it's maybe close to 30 million or thereabout now, only God knows exactly. And then their history is not that which anybody could seriously rely on, which means any senator in particular that grants an interview and attempts to speak of, in all sincerity, what he earns, what he makes, and all of that. I mean, we just saw what happened to Ndume. We equally saw how it went with the likes of Sheikh Husani when they were in the Senate and all of that. So when you just say something, another one begins to accuse you. Yeah, when you go public and you say these things, you are crucifying us and all of that. So the effort they put in to basically keep their activities in the dark is suspicious. So even if there was room basically to make any publications, an example is the so-called constituency projects. While it's understandable that the whole of the money, which runs into hundreds of millions, may not be given to them directly, but who controls, who calls the shots, who determines who the contractor is, and then you sit and make your negotiations and all of that. So I think the best way to deal with that would begin from the man, in charge, the man occupying the presidency. Usually, you don't want anybody to stand in your way. And that basically is where the issue of letting them have their way comes. Because you don't stay in my way and I don't stay in yours. So they get to do whatever. They do exercise all of those powers, even though officially it's not as if they sit down and dictate all of those things. But indirectly, they do it the very way they do with the constituency project funds. So I think the best way to deal with this matter would be to have a president that has that mandate, that measure of legitimacy, where he could confront a lot of issues, even when it concerns the excesses of the legislative arm, without the fear of anything. But when we do have people that came in through a faulty process, and then secondly, it may be a long shot, but when we begin to get to a point where the Nigerian masses begin to report senators, because we don't see much of that happening. We know there was an attempt to impeach, or maybe they just impeach a sitting Senate president, or you hear rumors they want to impeach the president and all of that. But we haven't really gotten to the point of recalling these people who come to the green and red chambers and do whatever it is they want. So perhaps that may be the best way to check them. But in terms of saying we bring in policies where they publish this and publish that, of course, they've mastered how to go about it, and that wouldn't solve the problem. Yeah.
Just finally, if you can squeeze your thoughts into a minute. I saw that there's a report that was put out by the Vanguard that at the end of 2023, Nigeria would have spent about 2.618 trillion naira on the National Assembly since its inception in 1999. Almost 2.7 trillion naira on running the National Assembly. That is a humongous cost, on the Nigerian state. How possible is it, that we can reduce that cost? And are we majoring on the minor? Are we focusing on the wrong things when we talk about their salaries? Is that really the highest aspect of the National Assembly cost? Or are there other things running into hundreds of billions of naira that the Nigerian, government must address to reduce the cost of running the National Assembly?
Yes, there are. An example is whatever it is they refer to as the cost of running their offices. To a large extent, I think it's uncalled for because it's an insult on the, on common sense and the masses of Nigeria for someone to say his salary is 800,000 or 1 million, and then the cost of running his office, which is not his salary, is about 25 or 30 million naira. And then you are supposed to be, oh no, they don't really earn much because it's 800 or 1 million naira. What do they do with the 25 or 30 million or whatsoever it is they get? So that's quite unnecessary. And I think the bulk of that amount you mentioned, those trillions, I'd say 85 to 90% of them don't go anywhere other than pockets of those people. Now, that is one of the things that look like it's public. When you talk about those tiny little things that I think, I don't know whether it was deliberate or a mistake that Fabio was telling them they should check in their mails, that there was a little something for them for, the break. I think now nobody has an idea how much that is. I think Ndume was making reference to huge sums of money and all of that. So all of that goes, all of that amount of money, at least 85-90% of that money is being stolen. Because I think if the executive don't do anything, and then these humongous amounts actually go to whatever it is we refer to as constituency projects, we may not really care about, the executive, whether the local government chairman does anything or the state governor does anything. So I think the bulk of that money is basically what goes to the so-called running of their office, which exactly what they do, you don't even know. The constituency projects, you don't know what they do with that. So that primarily is where the money goes. And then those heading committees and all of those tiny things. And then when you find a criminal that should actually be jailed, and then at the end of the day, it looks as if nothing happens. There are all of those corners that they cut, and people do not really know. So it's unfortunate. I would say to you, the bulk of that money basically goes into their pockets. That is just the truth of the matter.
All right.
And yes, I would repeat again, directly or indirectly, they actually fix whatever they make at the end of the day. It lies within their power. That's just it.
All right. Obviously, there needs to be an unbundling of the National Assembly, and it must come, from the
That's
top.
right.
The revenue, the RMAFC, I struggle with, saying the full word, must also play a part, in this conversation. Zaria Yusuf, thank you very much for starting your Monday morning with us. We look forward to more conversations with you. All right. Absolutely. And this is where we will be saying goodbye this morning. Thank you for kicking off Monday morning on Breakfast Central with us. We hope you truly did enjoy the conversations we had. Thanks to our guests also for joining us. Do we have a recap of some of the things we're going to be doing for the rest of the day? Okay, no recap. So we'll see you tomorrow. I am Osaogie Ogbon.
I'm Joe Hansen. See you again pretty soon. Stay with us.